I'm here in front of Williams International, right here in Detroit, Michigan, where this jet engine was developed by the men and women of Williams. This is Gregg Williams. His father, Sam, was the genius behind this project. He developed the original engine with Chrysler, what, 50 years, 60 years ago?
70 years ago.
Like 70 years ago,
Yeah.
There you go, 70 years ago. This project went back to the 50s, and by 1964, they had a working prototype that they gave to 209 Americans. Each got it for 3 months to drive it, see what it's like to drive a turbine on the street. They kept a diary. You actually sent the public out to do the R&D, which is pretty amazing at the time. When this engine just literally melted down on me, I went to Gregg. He brought us a team of men and women that managed to recreate it and put it together for us. Plus, we found like 60 people from the original team, all over the age of 80. One gentleman was like 94, and he was kind of bedridden, but his mind was still sharp as a tack, and he was instrumental in making the new regenerator. It's just great. It's just a very exciting project.
It was a real pleasure and honor for our team. It was a team of all volunteers, and they did it because it was in large part to honor the memory of my father, who created this engine some 70 years ago, and then he left Chrysler and started this company we're standing in front of today.
Gregg gave the team a clean room where they could do all their manufacturing and design and drawings. So much technical stuff. There's no way this could have been done anywhere else. I don't believe any other company could do it. It's that complex. Like I said, although a turbine has fewer moving parts than a V8, they're made to such a level. I mean, the regenerators, the thing that reused the heat, there were 22,000 octagon-shaped tiny holes that had to be drilled. We had to make they made special tools to make the parts, to bend the corrugated metal in the turbine. Just unbelievable. They did just an amazing job. And I love the fact that it's homegrown. It's right here in Detroit, using American labor and American technology. It's an engine that runs on any fuel that burns an oxygen. When they took it to France, they ran it on Chanel No. 5. When you took it to Mexico, they ran it on tequila. That was the fun part about it, you know? You don't want to be behind it when it's running on tequila, but pretty exciting. I got this car from Chrysler. There were only a few left. It was running when I got it. I drove it for, 5 or 6 years. The engine seized up on us, and there are no parts. It literally just melted down. I had no idea what to do. I said, well, let me contact some turbine guys. I contacted Gregg. I found out his dad was instrumental in developing this engine. We got together, they got together, about 60 guys from the original crew, all over the age of 80, who worked on the original product. It's just a fantastic story. You know, engineers are always engineers. And when Chrysler ended this project, these guys were all in their 20s. They got out of college, they were working on this turbine car, and then Chrysler said, no, it's not going to work, that's it. We're not going to be able to meet upcoming emissions. They told the engineers, throw away all the blueprints, well, engineers don't do that. They save everything. And these men are all over 80 at this point. They built me a brand new engine, thanks to Gregg. Gregg gave them a clean room, said, guys, go at it, and they did a wonderful job. Gregg, thank you, my friend.
You're very welcome.
And thank your dad. Your dad was the vision behind this car.
Well, I was going to say, this has been a labor of love for our entire team, because it was a great way to honor the memory of my father, who, as you say, created this engine when he worked for Chrysler back in the 50s.
You know, that's the amazing thing. When this car, you have to remember, it's 1964. We had won World War II. President Kennedy said we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of this decade. There was nothing we couldn't do. And the idea of Americans having jet cars before the rest of the world even had piston-powered cars just seemed unbelievable. But it was such a sensation. I saw this at the World's Fair in 1964. I was mesmerized. It kept driving around in circles in a pit, and my father's going, how long we got to watch this damn car? Let's get out of here. You know, I said, no, Dad, I want to keep watching it. So this was always my dream to acquire one. I acquired one when Chrysler went bankrupt. It was running, not terrifically, but okay, but there were no parts, there was nothing. And these guys were able to rebuild it from scratch, and I owe them. They just did an incredible job. Thank you, Gregg.
You're welcome. I don't want to fool anyone. We held our breath We just got this thing done about a week before you showed up here.
Well,
And we were holding our breath. The engine started perfectly the first time. It's a beautiful car.
the funny part is, you always hear, oh, turbines have less parts than piston engines, but those fewer parts are at such a level of precision that doesn't even come close to a V8. A V8 looks like you're doing this compared to how complex this was. When the engineers would send me the blueprints and what they were doing, I am not a mathematician. I am not even a mechanic. I love them, I understand it, but they were talking at a level so over my head, the metallurgy so advanced. See, jet engines are very expensive. They cost about $1 million because you're dealing with metallurgy that is so far and above automotive use, aeronautical use, at such high temperatures. It has to be incredibly complex alloys. And Williams was able to come up with an alloy that was not for aircraft use, but better than automotive use. It was in between automotive and aircraft, so it could be built at a reasonable price. And that was the exciting part, but all that was lost, and these guys were able to recreate it.
I think one of the keys is, Jay, that we're one of the few aerospace companies left that builds everything here, right here in the USA. We design it, manufacture it, support it in the USA, so we understand how to make stuff still.
Right.
So we were able to make the parts that we needed that no longer exist anywhere in the world in order to put this engine back together and get it running.
That's the fun part. It's all done right here in Detroit. American workers, American technology. You know, these guys developed a hybrid engine 30 years ago using jet technology, but it was too advanced at the time, and all the major manufacturers thought, well, we'd have to redo everything now. Okay. But it was pretty cool for its time, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. We did a hybrid electric vehicle for
hybrid electric
General Motors. And
yeah. Well, it's just great. Greg, I can't thank you enough. You ready to go for a ride?
that would be great.
Give it a
It'd
shot.
be exciting. Hope it works.
Oh, it'll. Well, it's historic. Let's give it a shot. Let's turn the key.
Hope it works.
Okay. Does that sound?
Sounds great.
We are idling at how many RPM? We're idling at 21,000 RPM. All right.
Nice and slow.
Here we go. The lack of vibration is just incredible.
It is amazing. You don't feel a thing. It's purring like a kitten, Jay.
Oh, that's great. Better than a kitten.
Love the smell of jet fuel in the morning.
That's it.
Jay, it's amazing the craftsmanship that went into this vehicle back in 1963.
Yeah, I wonder if you could even recreate it today. How were you able to do that?
Yeah, it really was a result of modern technology of today that allowed us to do that. In fact, a number of the parts could not have been created in today's environment had it not been for the advent of 3D metal printing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's so funny. My favorite thing is I get a lot of old guys that come through my shop, the guys, craftsmen that grew up on the Bridgeport lathes and all those kind of things.
Right.
And you show them 3D printing, they go, what? Well, I mean, it looks like something.
It is. It's right out of science fiction.
Yeah, it really is.
And but it's equally amazing just the level of craftsmanship that existed back in those days.
I know.
They were able to create this jet engine powered vehicle way ahead of its time.
You know, when you think back to the time when it happened, if they did have a problem, they just drove it to a dealer. Chrysler shipped another, they swapped the engine out, get rid of that one, put another one. I mean, what I wouldn't give to find all those discarded engines to have those parts to save.
Exactly. Our all-volunteer team was really excited to work on this car for you, Jay.
And the fun part was a lot of these guys knew your dad.
Absolutely.
Because
and it was amazing that how many of them were still around. I guess breathing jet fumes is good for you.
That's it.
There was a lot of 90-year-old guys that helped out in restoring this car that I don't think we could have done it without some of those 90-year-old Chrysler guys that were still
Jerry Gross
still around.
Those guys,
yeah.
You know, they were just fabulous.
They helped our guys.
Well, you know what's funny? You get older, And I think part of the thing to staying alive is being engaged with something to do.
Yeah,
and you have these engineers whose technology was not really needed anymore. So the fact that you come along with something like this, oh, hey, they can kind of.
Yeah.
It's a bit like the old days. You got somewhere to go. You got a job to do. You know.
And they all jumped all over it. They were here a lot.
They were just. It's like the
movie. Could have been sitting in a wheelchair, but they preferred to come out here and work on this engine.
Yeah.
For you.
Right. Your dad obviously lived long enough to see this through its lifespan. Maybe.
He did. Yeah.
He must have been disappointed when Chrysler canceled it, eh?
He was, but he saw the handwriting on the wall.
Yeah.
And that's why he left Chrysler in 1955 and formed his own company. He took 4 other of the top engineers from the turbine engine program and started, it was called Williams Research back then.
Right.
We're now called Williams International, and it's been growing ever since. So he had a total of 5 guys. Back in 1955, we now have 2,300 employees.
Oh, that's great.
One of the things we maintained throughout the history is made in the USA manufacturing. Every part that we make today in our fan jet engines for business jets are made here in the USA.
Yeah, that's great. Right here in Detroit.
Yeah, in Pontiac, and we also have a plant out in Utah. And the way the factory works is raw ingot comes in one end of the factory and engines pop out the other. We make everything right there in-house in one spot.
Oh, that's great. That's really exciting.
Yeah, we don't believe in outsourcing all over the world, and one of the advantages of that is that the engineers really understand the manufacturing process, and that's one of the keys to innovation.
Well, that's one of the things we've lost in this country now. I mean, we didn't just win World War II because we had the best soldiers. We won because we could manufacture airplanes faster than the Germans could blow them out of the sky, literally.
That's absolutely right. And the level of innovation was incredible because we understood how to make things.
Yeah. I mean, now, you're waiting on parts from overseas or some foreign country before you can finish your American project, you know?
Yep.
Whereas when these things were built, parts came from as far away as Indiana.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that the pendulum is starting to swing back the other way. People are realizing that U.S. manufacturing is the key to success. And keeping things under your control is critical for survival these days.
You know, driving this turbine car, you always want to keep it well under 1,600 degrees because I knew it was starting to go because I was getting leaks and the temperature was getting higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
And then one day it finally let go. But now I'm running about 1,300 degrees, which in a car would be off the road by now, but this thing, normal operation.
Yeah, the super alloys that are used in the turbine parts, the hot section of the engine, start to melt at around 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit.
You know,
and I know you got up somewhere close to that at the end of the life of this engine.
My Doble steam car, that runs high temperatures.
Right.
And I put a probe in the steam generator, and it went up to 3,000 degrees. I went, oh, it went all the way to 3,000 degrees. And then it came down again, and I went, oh, well, good, it's cooling off. No, what happened was the probe melted.
Yeah.
Here's another 64.
That is. Yeah.
That's one of those old-fashioned piston engines, isn't it? Beautiful car. 64? 65. 65.
Yeah, I work for John Robb at Cadillac.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Have a great day. Thank you so much. Love you.
Thank you. That's when Cadillac looked like a Cadillac.
That's a good looking car. That's a great looking car.
One of those old-fashioned pistons.
Yeah. Those things that make a lot of noise and vibration.
Yeah. It's just how smooth it is. And you know, and on the freeway, you know, it's so funny, when I got it, I was talking to some of the guys from the original team, I said, maybe I'll put radials on it. No, the bias ply, it's meant to run on bias ply for that
Yeah.
boulevard ride, which everybody wanted.
Right. And you had this on the highway?
Oh, yeah. Well,
What's the max speed you've had?
I cruise at
70,
70, 75.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
you're fine. Yeah.
That's a nice sounding horn.
Well, now on Woodward Boulevard, this is the beginning of the Woodward Dream Cruise. You know, the fun thing is, Woodward Boulevard is, how long is it, 15 miles or something? So you got a car show the whole length of the way.
I think it's more like 30 miles.
Is it 30 miles?
I think so.
Yeah, it's kind of
And
neat.
it was the first highway in the United States.
Oh, okay.
US 1.
Wow. You know, I first was here for the 25th anniversary. No, was it 100 years of the automobile? I can't remember. And that's when I first saw the Chrysler Turbine Car. And I went, I gotta get it. I mean, I first saw it, you know,
Sure.
not driving around the circle at the World's Fair.
Well, it's amazing how big of an event this Woodward Dream Cruise has become over the years, especially in the last 10 years or so.
Well, the fun thing is it's free. You know, I love Pebble Beach, but the Quail is now $1,500 a ticket. I mean,
Oh my gosh,
that's
yeah.
crazy. Who can afford to go to that?
Rich man's event. This is for the common man and the real true car lover.
Well, we didn't get a chance to do the whole Woodward cruise because it's like 30 miles long.
Yeah.
And it gets really, really packed in tight down there. And this car is still in the experimental stages. This is the first drive ever. I didn't think we'd have any problems, and we've done very well. The guys have done an amazing job. I want to thank Williams International and Gregg, and of course his dad, who really was the pioneer behind this whole project. So, nice piece of American history. Thanks for preserving history, my friend.
It's been an honor working with you on this project.
Thanks.
We really enjoyed it.
Come out to LA, we'll show you a good time.
I'd love to. Love to see your garage.